Let's do a survey. Are we getting more comfortable or less comfortable as the sits go on?
A bit less.
A bit less? Okay.
At the end of the day.
Okay, honest. Yeah. Well, those of us who are coming from a daily practice, it can be just the thing to drop right in to more sitting or the retreat enthusiasm like that. You had a good daily practice, Martin?
Not that bad, yeah. You mean like sitting every day? You mean by good daily? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when I started with, well, anybody who starts with Cuenca will discover what pain is. But I noticed also that after several years after quite some time of practice, you notice that you can sit longer and longer and longer, just being comfortable. And at Goenka, you need to sit for 1 hour aditana, so like without moving three times a day. And that's for 10 days. And the other hours you can move and whatever. But the 1 hour seems so incredibly long in the beginning. And after a while, it just becomes so like, oh, the hour is already passed. Okay, I didn't notice that. But yeah, it takes some time to practice. And if you do it every day, then you come. We here in the West, we're not used to sitting like that. I remember when I went to Burma, and there, well, we didn't have cushions at all. We just sat on the concrete floor, and they had some kind of or something like cushion to sit on, but that was filled with straw, and it was very hard. So it wasn't actually. But all these Burmese people, they had no problem whatsoever sitting for hours on that concrete floor, because they do it from birth, basically. They start to do that, and we're not used to that. So yeah, we have to get a little bit into that practice.
Well, one will learn that even sitting in a chair for longer times, or even lying down meditation, will get challenging inevitably. One's not moving. And I don't know about yours, but our Goenka retreats had 2-hour aditana sits. That's what I remember. That was the excruciating pain of a lifetime.
I do remember that at one point, and I thought like, oh, everybody else is sitting 1 hour, I'm gonna do 2 hours. And I did, and I was very proud of myself that I did it. And later on, I just realized, no, that was just so stupid. It's just like, being, propping up your ego. It's like, I'm so great and whatever.
There's the macho side of it, maybe, or the ego side of it, but there's also, this kind of setting yourself a challenge or an endurance and, achieving a goal like that. I remember feeling that part of it too, like actually being able to sit that whole 2 hours, but that's pretty grueling for beginners.
Well, where did you sit your first?
That was in North Fork, California.
Oh, okay.
North California, thank you.
Here in Belgium, we're much more relaxed. We do 1 hour.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Okay. Would you like to start off?
Well, we want to start with one question about questions. I think that's a good one to start with. Yeah. Oh, you have that one. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, you probably read a few answers.
We all three can.
Yeah.
All three answer, yes.
So practical question about questions. Should our questions only be regarding how our current practice is going? Or can we also ask more general conceptual questions about our practice outside of the retreat, and to inquire about your or your tradition's approach to topics or situations. This also applies to how we approach our interviews. So I probably maybe
as far as I'm concerned, you can ask anything you would like. We might put a question a little bit aside and answer it later, like to the end of the retreat. But yeah, like last retreat, I had a lot of questions about things like going on Twitter and how to not do that anymore, or not to waste too much time on the social media and how. So we just put it aside till the last day, and then we answered it that way. So yeah.
Right. Well, on this recent retreat in Sweden, we did have many beginner meditators and also their first retreat. So they just had so many questions, and even, midway or early on about reintegration, how they're going to be taking this into a daily practice, or where they can connect with, other teachers, other teachings, other retreats, how to do them. They keep hearing about the Goenka retreat. It's the first time they've heard, and it's so exciting to open up Retreat World there, retreat space, that kind of thing. So yeah, any and all questions, and sometimes we'll set them aside, or they will be linked to in some way to how our practice is going right here today.
Well, and also during interviews, it's like probably best to in the first days, just about your practice right now, staying in the present moment. It's presence awareness. That's what this retreat is about. But yeah, also at the end, then there's plenty of space for everybody to sign up for multiple interviews. They can always ask about your situation at home, or in your work, or anything later on, and we can discuss that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also if we are newer to the practice, or we are just hearing about other traditions or other perspectives or interpretations, like the Thai forest tradition or something, we could be very curious and just have questions about new things we're hearing, maybe if they are a bit different than what we are familiar with, what we've been introduced to, like if it has been mostly Goenka, or even other kinds of Buddhism or something like that. So yeah, you know what they say, if you don't ask questions, you get reborn as a donkey. That's what they say. So, but as I mentioned, and also it feels like the questioner is mindful of wanting to keep things practical, so we can really tune into being present and aware, and what our phenomenology is, and learn things about our thinking process.
I don't know. I suppose more generally about questions. It's like, because any question we are able to articulate, that sort of already determines the sort of the direction, or how we might see the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So then, using this sort of format of questions also in that reflectively, when you are considering what to ask, then what is it that is meaningful for you in your life? And then if one is able to ask a question from that sort of more genuine place, then it also probably is helpful to other people as well, maybe. And also I often remember that so in some talk or questions and answers, someone else asked a question. Maybe I was thinking about that, but I wasn't maybe able to articulate, but because they asked it, and then the answer I also found helpful. So it's also not just for oneself, but also can also be of help to others to ask if some thought comes up or just noticing, what comes up, what is it that one is concerned with, etc.
Yes.
Good point. Yes.
And as we alluded to all too briefly yesterday, just in our kind of meet and greet, the kinds of questions that get asked are so insightful for us to get to know you a little bit better, see where your practice is at, see what is interesting and inspiring to you. Those are going to be so helpful to us to just see what's connecting or maybe what we're not communicating clearly, that kind of a thing, but especially to tune into what is of interest to you. We're kind of a broad group here, as usual, and we didn't get too much time to share where our practice yesterday. So that kind of thing will be very helpful to us. So please do feel free to ask any and every question. And as far as like this, to inquire about our tradition's approach to topics or situations, very much so. Those kinds of questions, like getting different perspectives from different traditions, please do ask that. It didn't, it maybe wasn't emphasized in Aya's lovely introduction of me yesterday, but I have even though I did ordain in the Thai forest tradition over 20 years now, but my inspiration has been very, very broad from the start. As mentioned, my first retreat was at Goenka. My first monastic was Thich Nhat Hanh, and then the Dalai Lama. And I've just practiced across many traditions and have a broad inspiration. So I love questions that are coming from other perspectives too, and looking for more universal themes or patterns to connect this up. Well,
Okay.
is there anything more on that? Yeah. Good question about questions.
Okay. All right.
You've got the clock now, by the way.
Yes.
Don't you have a watch?
Yeah, but then I'm gonna have to keep on looking at it.
Oh, well. Oh, I have to keep looking at it. Okay.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about getting out of the way, between quote marks, not trying to control the mind during meditation and not being carried away by thoughts while meditating? Not a small question. And everybody has thoughts, so first of all, don't be hard on yourself. That's when you start seeing is like, oh, this is what my mind is like, and I can't control it at all. And all these years that I've been trying, and it's not working. So you get a glimpse of some kind of insight in how the mind is and how that works. And yeah, for me, what I find most helpful is first of all to relax and to start also, if you have enough mindfulness, you can also start to see it's like, oh, when there is a thought, how does that feel? Not trying to push the thought away, but like, oh, I don't want this, and this whole, for me, always this business of like, oh, constantly bringing it back to the breath or to whatever object you're meditating on never works, and I hear that from a lot of people. So just trying to investigate with wisdom of what's really going on. Okay, there's a thought. But what does that feel like? Where do I feel that? What's connected with that thought? It's their emotions. What's going on there? And after a while, you begin to see is how does what is happening in your mind when thoughts come up. And when you start seeing that, you can get the insight at some point. If you stay with that long enough and investigate long enough, and with loving kindness, with mindfulness, then at some point you get some idea of like what's going on, and then you don't need to have that thought anymore because it's no longer necessary, and you can let it go. For me, one thing I really noticed is that when there are thoughts in the mind, there's also a certain tension in my brain, especially in the back. And when I notice that, then I go, oh, I immediately start to relax that part of my brain, and the thoughts disappear. So that's another way of like, then you don't really know what's going on underneath the thoughts, but that's also something that you can notice. Like, if you really want to know if it's like a recurring thought, like a recurring theme in there, then you might want to find out like, well, what's really going on underneath. Is there some emotions connected to it, maybe some things that have happened in your life, what's really going on there, and to stay with those feelings with love and kindness, and at some point you'll find out from what's going on in your mind. That's very so that's actually the opposite of trying to control the thoughts, but you learn to see your thoughts as gifts as well as your friend, to stay with that as with mindfulness and caring, and trying to investigate with wisdom rather than to push it away. Because when we start pushing things away, like, oh, I don't want this, I want to have a nice, quiet, calm, lovely meditation. And then there's all these thoughts and they're in the way, so I don't want that. And there's negativity that comes up. And when you have that negativity, you're not going anywhere. You're just creating more negativity. It's more important what is between you and the thought than the thought itself. So if you can stay with that thought with more love and kindness and wisdom, understanding, listening to what's really going on there, then you have a different attitude towards the thought, more and you're creating and developing your attitude of listening, or love and kindness, of mindfulness, and that's what's more important than what you're observing. But if there's you observing something, but what's in between you and what you're observing, that's where we can develop our mind. Atjan, is there something more you want to
Very
say?
nice. Yes, very good points, Aya. We have a saying, changing the attitude changes the circumstances.
Yes.
So Aya's emphasizing this, that perhaps more important than the thing in itself is our relationship to it, at least maybe at this stage. And even this shift of attitude from one of, yes, whatever, struggle or aversion or control and manipulation, to interest, curiosity, even fascination, or sometimes insight, vipassana, we call it. Just that shift is enough to ease some of the grasping, some of the resistance, some of the struggle that seems to be there. So this can depend, and as Aya mentioned, it could become extremely interesting and insightful for us, especially if we are already beginning to, sensitize and become a bit more introspective. Our inner world is starting to open up. We're beginning to open up to it, just giving it space, on a retreat, and also being able to maybe relax some of the concerns of daily life and be more present and aware. So this can be incredibly insightful. Going in to investigate the thoughts and what the underlying emotions might be, what the underlying, patterns of psychology might be, if we're inspired in that way, and really begin to do some work there, or do some experimentation there with reframing. For example, if it is a self story, we know there's many wonderful ways we can reframe that, or just shift our attitude, or, as we mentioned this morning, taking unpleasant situation, as a challenge or a learning opportunity like that. That's a kind of a reframing strategy, which can work wonders to change the attitude and actually change the circumstances. One can also do more insight on the thought itself, like its, conditioned nature, its dependent origination, what tends to give rise to the thoughts or what emotion tends to trigger the thoughts, but also just the thoughts, as we mentioned, as Bobo the cat gave us a wonderful demonstration of how one can simply watch the birds at play without grasping, without making a fuss, but with just the kind of, we actually don't know what's going on in Bobo's mind there. she could be saying, just remove that glass for an instant and I've got dinner. But that kind of a simile where we are able to take a step back, have some space, watch the thoughts, maybe with that sort of, attitude of insight, seeing their impermanent nature, actually watching thoughts self-liberate when they're not grasped at. We all know, easier said than done, but that's a simile for thoughts. It's like writing on water when they're not grasped at. And when we start to see more their inherently, whatever, impermanent nature to arise and pass away, or just more like a flow, like a bird flying through the sky, we can actually feel our way into that, being in harmony with it, even gaining an appreciation of it. And all of that can really shift the energetic dynamic. Two thoughts, rather they're in the way, and how to get out of it. We've all heard the saying, what's in the way is the way, right? Have we heard that? Okay. Well, like it or not, what's in the way is the way. These are all opportunities for practice, challenges for practice. So I mean, there's too much to say there. There's this wonderful discourse from the middle length collection of the early Buddhist teachings called the removal of distracting thoughts. And there are 5 different ways on how to remove thoughts. And say one of them is just to simply bring the attention back to the object of meditation. No fuss at all. Goes into distraction, just bring it back to the breath, say. That's what we're doing. And one of the similes is like potty training a puppy. See, there's that metta loving kindness element, and you've ever potty trained a puppy, and I have. You just bring the puppy back. No need to scold it. It will get the hang of it. And so actually training our attention that way on the breath, it does work. I mean, for some, maybe it will not be the way to develop their meditation. But for others, they do get the hang of it, actually training the attention and non-distraction. And they pick up all kinds of tricks of the trade along the way. And one of them is this no fuss, just no fuss. It's not a problem. Thoughts are natural. Just bring it back. No fuss. And that's learning non-grasping right there. That's like a practice in itself. We're actually learning that just from this simple exercise with breath meditation. Another, I think the second one in that discourse, the Vitaka Santana, is just to direct me. Is it the
I think the was the first one, not substituting it with the opposite.
Oh, I thought that was the second one. Anyway, that's another one, is substitution of opposites. So if it's a sort of an irritation thought, one will substitute it with like loving kindness, for example. Or if it's a desire thought, one may substitute it with a kind of a contentment reflection like that. So one can do an active substitution like that to just have the mind sort of resettle on the breath. And wisdom? Yes.
Like what I already talked about.
Oh, okay. Using some investigation to understand the phenomena and sort of let it disperse itself. So yes, there are bona fide techniques on strategic ways to deal with say, kinds of distraction, but there's also presence awareness. So learning how to just hold space and be aware for what's arising with non-grasping like that. So that can be a bit more broad. Perhaps many of us are familiar with the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and this is a bit more like the third, which is called Chitta Nupassana, or contemplation of mind, where you're actually just being observant with what's arising in the space of one's mind, or heart mind. This includes, like emotional content too. And one trick from the Burmese tradition is to do like a mental noting. That's another one, which is sometimes just enough to acknowledge something's present and note it, and then return to the meditation theme, or just to being present and aware. So, yeah, John.
May I see the question?
Yes.
I like the framing of the question.
Would you reread it?
Could you talk a little bit about getting out of the way, not trying to control the mind during meditation, and not being carried away by thoughts while meditating? So yeah, I like that, because usually often people tend to ask, oh, how can I control my mind? How can I control my emotions? But then that maybe tends to be a counterproductive approach, because it's almost like, if we go to the beach and we want to say the waves, to stop the waves, we sort of put our hands and try to make it smooth. Because it's like we don't really know, where these thoughts, emotions, mental states come from. It's this sort of darkness, and then we can't, and then something arises from that. So we can't see what will come next. And then we can't trace back all the causes and conditions that have brought that particular thing to consciousness. But what we can do is become more skillful in how we meet whatever has arisen. So it's in a sense, what is it that grabs one's attention? So yeah, like I'm using that word, as so much of it is about training or becoming aware of where one's attention gets caught. So then it's not so much that the thoughts themselves are a problem, but like Ajahn Chah's thing about it's not the sound that disturbs you, it's you who disturbs the sound. So that can also be applied to thoughts. That it's not the thoughts that disturb us, it's we who disturb the thoughts. So thoughts are just there. Like this glass, it's there. I didn't make it. It's just here. And then same with thoughts that arise. There was something else. Yes. So for example, it's like and noticing cessation. The attention maybe tends to jump to the next thought or the next emotion or the next thing that is most draws the attention. So some particular thought or emotion, mental state arises, and then arises over the threshold of consciousness, and so the attention jumps to that, and then after a while it sort of subsides, because anything that has arisen based on causes and conditions can't sustain itself forever unless there's an input of energy. So then in its own time it subsides. And then the attention so jumps to the next thing that has arisen. But we don't tend to notice the cessation, the sort of any particular mental state, thought, emotion that has arisen. Then as it fades, to see how long we can follow it, like I was saying yesterday, following the sound of the bell, listening it as it fades away.
Mm.
And then noticing the gap between the thoughts. Lumpo Sumedo often, one of the things he often encourages is you can also like deliberately think some sort of basic, simple thought like my name is, and then my name is, and then not just noticing the gaps between the thoughts. And then gradually one can start to do that with ordinary thoughts that might arise in meditation. And then that in a sense that leads to that getting out of the way. It's not so much that we can pick ourselves up and we can willfully, willful decision, take ourselves out of the way. But it's more like that sort of allowing oneself to get out of the way.
Thank you. This is a good example where it would be excellent to include what kind of practice you're doing. Or, am I focusing on the breath, or am I trying to just practice open awareness or something like that? Because, perhaps if the mind just is agitated, or we may notice at a particular time of day, the mind is just more busy or more active. And that might be a time to do kind of body sweeping or body scanning, which does really help to sort of get the attention out of the head where the thinking tends to focus. Or even if we are sort of watching the breath, like at the nose tip, even just having the attention up in the head can really be, encourage like thinking or thoughts, and it might open up this struggle. So sometimes bringing the awareness down into the body, or focusing on body sensations like that, or even doing a more active kind of a meditation, like a special loving kindness guided meditation, or a special kind of an insight theme. If the mind wants to be active, maybe that could be the thing to do. So to be a bit adaptable there and have a few meditation practices in your repertoire that can help to utilize the kind of situation that you're in, like that. And just a little, another little note on that, like this thing about beginning to play with the thoughts themselves a bit. One can also just see what happens when one says, okay, mind, go ahead and think. Actually, this is a simile from an early Buddhist tradition. It's like when you tie up a camel, the camel will want to, I have just been to Morocco, maybe you can verify this. You tie up a camel and the camel will rebel and want to run in all the 10 directions. But then you untie the camel just will sit there. Doesn't like being tied up.
Well, they didn't tie them up there.
Aha! And they stayed put.
Well, no, they just roamed around and ate some things and came back again.
Okay. Maybe similar thing with the mind. The mind is a bit like a camel. You can use reverse psychology on it sometimes. Say, go ahead, mind. Think, go ahead. It's okay. Really? What do I think about now? But don't think. Turn the tables.
Mm-hmm.
Any follow up on that, Ryan?
No, not at the moment.
Camels?
Do you have camels? Well, don't know what to say about camels. I guess they know where their food is, so they'll come back. Actually, you didn't read one yet.
Oh, okay. Dear Venerable Ajahn Bodhisattva, could you please give some advice on how to de-nourish and overcome the sense of self and bhava tanha? Thank you very much. De-nourish. Okay, did everyone get that? some advice on how to de-nourish and overcome the sense of self and bhava tanha. For the non-poly geeks, bhava tanha, that's sort of the craving of becoming or the desire for becoming that's usually associated with a self-projection, like into a future with a future vector, like my present is concerned with having myself be a certain way in the future, even if it means not changing things about the present that are pleasing to me. That's a kind of a future vector of bhava tanha. And this is one that's said to be one of the three, sort of major groups of, well, craving tanha. It depends on how familiar, how fluent we are with sort of the Buddhist teachings or the Buddhist doctrine. This comes up in the Four Noble Truths and in the first noble truth of there is suffering, second noble truth of the origin of suffering being these three kinds of desire or craving, tanha. Verse 1, sensuality, desire. The second one, desire for non-becoming, vibhava, which is wanting to stop something or to not wanting, as the simple sort of working definition that I've been using, not wanting, and this bhava tanha, this desire for becoming. So those are said to be the origination of suffering there. But of course, we'd have to include the fundamental ignorance or understanding of our sense of self. And I want this, I don't want that, where that's coming from. So there's a little bit of context here for this question. And de-nourishing the sense of self, well, even just some of these basic, what we've been including as the sort of basic, meditation instruction, like how to be more aware, how to be more mindful, how to be more aware of the sense of self. That's already creating some space there, or a little bit of disidentification with whatever we are taking to be our sense of self here. And usually there will be a very more solid sort of mental self-identity we have, or as a person like that. So this de-nourishing, that is a huge step towards sort of de-nourishing. It's just being able to get some space of awareness to be able to observe our sense of self. There's already a huge space opening up there. And the bhava tanha, any any reduction in both any clarity of insight we get about that. Oh, this is just such a big question. I mean, seeing, for example, the things that this has to do with overcoming the sense of self. So yeah, I mean, we just would want to be quite specific. The Buddha does introduce the contemplating our sense of self to see if it does actually qualify as a legitimate sense of self or an identity. So for example, we're looking at the aggregates of identity, the aggregates of ourself, which we identify with, and we're seeing, are they permanent? Are they impermanent? Are they conditioned? Are they unconditioned? Do they change? Do they actually qualify as a bona fide sense of self? So all of that inquiry, and there's a positive side to this inquiry too, just this shifting more into the awareness or the knowing allows us to get some clarity regarding the thinking, the story that the thinking is telling itself about its sense of self. so this is going to be a more theme topic a few days into the retreat here, so it's hard to address it all at once. And perhaps this person is already kind of familiar with contemplating the sense of self and the desire vector into the future, which is related to that. And would you like to say some words on that?
Well, I'd also say that, well, we're going into that topic more and more over a number of days. I think things will probably become more clear in that, rather than to try and fit it in 10 minutes.
De-nourish the sense of self. But any seeing the kind of the grasping, anywhere that we see grasping, even if it's just coming from tranquility or a kind of an equanimity, or better yet, insight, everywhere we're seeing that, hey, when I just loosen my grip on this grasping or something I'm attaching to or clinging to, that gives more space, more freedom, more opportunity to use better judgment, or to use our insight, or to sort of defuse a reaction or a habit loop that's going on. All of that is de-nourishing that more dysfunctional sense of self. And all these positive things that we're cultivating too, those are cultivating a functional sense of self. I mean, this thing about the Noble Eightfold Path is we're very much developing a lot of positive qualities and virtue that do have our sense of self there. So it's usually going to be a both and project. We don't want to hit too hard on the deconstruction, like I have to get rid of my sense of self in order to get rid of this desire, in order to get rid of my suffering, in order to get enlightened. There's a new kind of struggle that can open up there, and perhaps a bit a misguided one. Remember, the important thing is to see the sense of self with insight. That's the important thing, but this is well worded, to be de-nourishing that. But remember this thing about, it's not so much the object, but our relationship to it. So we're wanting to see the sense of self with insight. And then you might even see it as our non-self self. We can see there's a sense of self here, but it's actually a co-creation event. It's kind of a fabrication, of the magic of the mind. And this experience we have to identify with a body, a mind, and sense consciousness, and the feelings of pleasant and unpleasant that arise in it, just like that amoeba that we were talking about this morning. Not just like, quite more complicated. But we can see there's a natural process here. And just imagine if nature or life, they put this sense of self here. We didn't invent it. It's like made by nature, almost as if nature is doing us through this sense of self. So the sense of self might turn out to be like quite innocent in itself. But what we are is seeing it more with insight, like a bigger picture, kind of global insight, which is helping to see it more as it is, like a co-creation event. Or if you're the imaginal type, it's the magic of the mind, something like that. And that can change the relationship to it. And it might very well change a lot. This thing about going outside to try to satisfy desires, or to try to, nourish a kind of a self-image. A lot of that may be corrected by these sort of more global insights that we have. Put us more in harmony with things. So yeah, there's just great discussions to be had on that. That's totally related to our meditation and our virtue and our ethics and our wisdom practice, our Eightfold Path. Do you want to say something?
Just brief story came to mind that especially this de-nurturing the sense of self. I was doing a retreat with Thai Ajahn disciple of Ajahn Chah, And at first he was talking about various peaceful states of mind that can arise in meditation. But then he stopped, and then he said, "Oh, maybe some of you are thinking that Lumpo is talking about these peaceful states of mind, but then when I meditate, it's not like that at all. So therefore, that must mean that I don't have the parami or merit or ability to meditate." But then he said, "But this is wrong view, because what one is doing is creating an image of a self and then having a negative judgment about that image. So that's just a wrong direction from the start." So in Buddhism, like Sakhadik, the self view, one of the factors. So then, but instead, what your attitude should be is just don't stop practicing. And when I heard that, it was such a relief, because then it's not our duty to become this great spiritual practitioner who has all these special attainments or meditation states, but just the willingness, moment by moment by moment, to just don't stop practicing. And then the more we can do that, then that leads to that sort of more knowledge of what is this thing that we call self, or where does identification take place.
I also was thinking of my teachers also gave this example of like, well, if you sit in meditation and just ask yourself, who do I take myself to be? What is this self? How can I feel it? How can I experience this? What do I think I am? And that's actually even the wrong question, because that already assumes that you are. So it's like, what do you take yourself to be? And that's actually a very interesting question. It can go very, very, very deep if you go further and further investigating that. And then at some point you come up, you begin to understand this feeling that goes with this sense of self. That is actually this a feeling that's like, oh, okay, this is a sense of self, and every time we suffer, it's there. This sense of self is there. If we have like a craving or we have aversion or whatever is happening, if we suffer, then it's because this sense of self is there. And it's very interesting if you start to see that, then you become more disinterested actually in this sense of self, or in defending this sense of self, and you slowly start to let go more of that sense of self. Like, maybe I'm going a bit too far right now.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that in the next few days.
Yeah. Every little bit of non-grasping or letting go. They say drop by drop you fill a bucket. And we can actually get the hang of it and get skilled in that, and just being able to see something, want to hook on, and just let it go. It's okay. This kind of acceptance or loving kindness, or just the space of presence and awareness, can just kind of let something, let it come, let it go, or let it be, and not make too much fuss. We can see these past 10, 20, 30 years, how much stuff did we make fuss? And it really wasn't fuss-worthy. So just learning to keep the big picture in mind and not grab on so tightly or release the grip is definitely good practice. And we can do it all the time in all kinds of little ways and creative ways.
We're going to leave this question for tomorrow as well. It's this question. It's another question on the spreadsheet about a Buddhist cosmology. So that also allows me a day to actually look something up there. because I don't have that kind of knowledge really. Icons probably, but I'm not.
Usually we save cosmology for the last day too, lest we really go far and wide.
Yes, but anyway, I'll forward you that question so that and this question is, what does it mean to you to take refuge in this triple gem? So we'll talk about that tomorrow as well.
Let's include that in the talk.
Include it in
It's
the
a
talk.
great question.
Yes,
We
absolutely.
alluded
yes.
to it with the bowing
Mhm.
that you
I'll
mentioned
leave
this
that
morning.
one there. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Mhm.
And as it's 8 o'clock, we're going to do a small guided meditation. And then that's it for today. So yeah, I'm not. I was gonna. I will you do it too, and I'll do it tomorrow night. Yeah.
You just did the French one.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
sort of French.
Amore.
Oh yes.
So then the end of the first day, again just allowing the body to settle, just reflecting on all the effort you put in. Finding a comfortable posture, just this short metta meditation at the end of the day. Bringing that intention of well-wishing towards oneself. It's like you can imagine a still pool of water. It's a still pool of consciousness. And you're putting the thought of metta, loving kindness, metta for yourself. Just dropping that thought into the still pool of consciousness and observing the shapes of the ripples that arise. Just noticing what arises as we attempt to generate the intention of metta for oneself. On some days it might be easy, on some days it might be hard, and the mind is more reactive. But just noticing what is it that arises, then having metta for that condition as well. Cultivating metta or loving kindness for all conditions. If you find it useful, you can use thoughts like, may I be safe, may I be well, may I be happy, may I have ease of living. Or you can also coordinate it with your breathing. Breathing in, doing metta for oneself, then breathing out, just relaxing. One of the things you can also try is if you are doing metta meditation, just having the whole session, just trying to have metta for oneself. Often metta is we often focus on directing it to others. But if you have time, you can also try just to have a session, just directing it to oneself, like we did yesterday. But then also we can, if the metta, if there is a sense of metta, loving kindness, and one can also start directing it to others. Maybe bringing to mind individuals, beings for whom it is easy to have metta for. People you might be close to, people you care about. Maybe bringing them to mind individually or as a group. If you are good at visualization, you can imagine them before you and then sending them metta, well wishing. May you be safe, may you be well, may you be happy, may you have ease of living. Breathing in, having metta for oneself, then breathing out, directing it to others, particular individuals, a group of individuals. Yeah, just taking one's time. There's no need to rush. Just bringing particular individuals to mind, generating the intention of metta or well-wishing, loving kindness towards them. Breathing in, having metta for oneself, and then breathing out, directing it to others, starting with people for whom it is easy to have metta for. Sometimes it is easier to generate metta for other people. Sometimes it is easier to generate metta for oneself. Whatever is easy, one can also direct that metta to the other group. if it's easier to generate metta for others, is that feeling or mind state of metta gets stronger. One can also direct that metta to oneself. And then if the metta or loving kindness towards oneself has established itself or gets stronger, and one can also direct that to include others. And if on a particular day it is difficult to generate metta at all, and only critical thoughts come up, and that's fine as well. And one can have metta towards those critical thoughts. Creating a metta for all conditions. Just as Deepama said, metta is not different from mindfulness, and mindfulness is not different from metta. Space and consciousness can receive everything. In the same way, metta can also receive everything. Breathing in, having metta for oneself, and then breathing out, adding it to others. If you like, gradually expanding the circle of the people or beings we include. We starting to include people we may not know so very well, just acquaintances, people we may see every day, we may not having a sort of either positive or negative relationship. Just including them as well, gradually expanding the circle of the beings one includes. You can bring to mind individuals one by one, or just as a group, whatever works best. Bringing them to mind, and then generating the intention of metta, loving kindness, loving friendliness, well-wishing towards them. Breathing in, having metta for oneself, and then breathing out, directing it to others. As the retreat goes on, we may also try and include people for whom it is difficult to have metta for. For the moment, just staying with people for whom it is easy to have metta for, or just people we have a neutral relationship to. Metta or loving kindness doesn't mean that we approve of any fault or wrong action of another individual, but it means receiving them just as they are and wishing them well as a starting point. Just like the space in this room. Someone can walk in here and start praising us, or someone can walk in here and start insulting us. But the space can receive everything and is unaffected by it, unaffected by the most positive or the most negative. And metta has that same unconditioned quality. Breathing in, having metta for oneself, receiving the whole of the person, both the positive aspects and the negative aspects, wishing oneself well, then breathing out, spreading it to others. Being near the end of the meditation, just looking back and reflecting. What was it like? What is it that we can learn from having done this? Just noticing the effect on the mind, whatever it may be. And finally, if you like, just sharing the blessings, sharing the merit with all sentient beings. If there has been any benefit from having done this, may it also be of benefit to all sentient beings. And then again, just listening to the sound of the bell, see how far one can follow it, just allowing the sound to bring the mind into the present moment.
Aham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi. Swagato Bhagavata Dhammo Nama Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Sanghaṃ